Look, I know you've already achieved unheard of levels of success as an entrepreneur. So the real question is, while the world is radically shifting, how do we not get caught up in the chaos, but instead access our untapped capacity? You know what I'm talking about. I'm Katie Richardson, business coach to superstar entrepreneurs and host of What's Working Now. I'm here to show you how to unlock and magnify your untapped potential so that we can create the dream, live with purpose, and do what we are born to do. On this podcast, we are asking a different set of questions. Be present, be curious, be right now. Let's go. Hit that subscribe button and go to what'sworkingnow.com, drop in your email, join the waitlist so you never miss an episode of What's Working Now. And I'll see you on the inside. So one of the things that we've been talking about, I told you I have a 5-step process. It's an operating system. It's a way for you to step into your power and also empower your team. Step number 1 is being hyper aware. If we can't see it, we can't change it. Seeing and noticing when you get triggered. And that's the first step, is to acknowledge it. The brutal truth. And in this scenario, if and when we have thoughts that say, oh, he should have told me which unit it was, are a denial of reality. The truth is, there's not a system in place to ensure that he's giving you the right unit. Accountability in my world is not beating up or bullying yourself. I think a lot of times high performers have utilized an inner bully to kind of motivate and push themselves to excel beyond most other people. And that has a major downside and shadow. Eventually starts to become extremely destructive. I think that's a big part of why you're here, is we're trying to evolve that, to acknowledge what is. And here's how you do it. You say in your mind, it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. Because normally we have this tendency to label things as good or bad. But can you see how by even saying that shouldn't have happened, we're denying reality? And if you deny reality, reality wins every time, and it will drag you down. The brutal truth that there wasn't a system in place, that, you know, you didn't ask him or whatever that is, from a neutral place, come to this neutral place of curiosity, like, oh, isn't that interesting? I didn't realize that I don't have a system in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. Isn't that interesting? If we're paying attention and telling the brutal truth. Now, when we attach all of these labels and we beat ourselves up and we get in that negative place, it's like this downward spiral, and we create tremendous drag for ourselves. And yet we've created it. Yeah. You don't need to be, running after building your business and deploying a parachute behind you. It's a lot easier if that parachute isn't there and it's not creating the drag. So we eliminate the drag by telling the truth and letting it be what it is. This is probably new and different. And so words or phrases that you could say to yourself is, it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. And that helps us remove the labels. And what's beautiful is then, without the negativity, without the drag, you can hop in and take care of the situation. Now, your body will be habituated in the negativity, in the beating yourself up. So that's why we notice that, oh, I'm beating myself up again. And sometimes we can really become hijacked by our physical chemistry, and it can be really hard to pull out of it. And when that happens, just keep noticing it. Oh, wow, I am like raging mad right now. The more you start to build this new muscle of being able to pull out of it. So just keep noticing it. This principle is really helpful in marriage, because our marriage is our most vulnerable relationship. And especially when we make a mistake or misunderstanding, and we have this tendency to really defend our position. And if we can just let it be what it is, then we can work together as a team, and we become a we, not a me and you, because that creates the separation. So the same is true on a team, right? This guy who loves doing repairs, the more that you can be on the same team with him energetically or emotionally when something happens.
Yeah.
And it's not a finger pointing and a blaming. We've got to take ownership for the business. We have to take ownership for the fact that there wasn't a system in place.
Yeah.
And life has just handed you a gift and said, hey, Chris, there's an opportunity to improve things right here. And you're seeing it. And this kind of stuff happens all the time, especially when it's the kind of business like what you've built, which is when you started, it was just you. Now that we see it for the brutal truth that it is, what's something that you could do to improve this so it doesn't happen next time? Because that's the last piece. Like, we have this cool insight. This is a simple example, but this is the principle. If we don't actively make the change, whatever it is, it will keep happening, because life's actually trying to help you level up. So it will keep happening until you implement the change. And the beautiful thing is, you implement the change and the problem goes away. Okay, see, here's another chance to be aligned with the brutal truth. Let me use an example from a client. I have a client his business is growing very rapidly. And so there's always shifting and changing and people coming and people going and bringing new arms to the business and then eliminating other arms. It's super complex. And the guy was just not meeting a standard. It was good enough to keep limping along. And my client actively made a decision. I know this guy eventually has to go, but right now I'm going to limp along with him. And so he made that decision, and he told the brutal truth that he's going to go someday. And right now is not the truth. When he finally let the guy go and he himself got into the finances of the business, he realized this guy was way worse than he realized. And I kept reminding him, hold on a second. We made a decision. And that's the brutal truth. The brutal truth is, we knew he was not meeting your standard. And so you've got to own it. Don't beat yourself up the fact that you didn't let this guy go 6 months ago. That, like, the Liam of 6 months ago, given the information that he had, he made the best decision he could. And so that's also part of the brutal truth. Yes, you've even maybe typed up systems and you just haven't deployed them because it wasn't a priority. And just owning that, not giving the backstory, not backpedaling with all of these excuses, and just owning it. Wasn't a priority. My friend, he goes to the same church that I do. And if you're late to church, it's like really frowned upon. He's like, wasn't a priority, and just totally owns it. And I love it. And he's just telling the truth. The priority was making sure his boys were happy and that there wasn't friction in the family, and to try and rush them out of the house was going to create friction. Of course, he was working on putting in better systems to get to church on time. But in the meantime, he was telling the truth, which was getting to church on time. It's just not a priority today. You know, we put expectations on ourselves. We get expectations from others. And so it's human nature kind of to defend ourselves when we come up short. So I had somebody, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. She was putting on this event in St. George. She reached out to me and said, you know, I'm really impressed with what you've done with your business and how you've exited it and how you're coaching. And I would really like you to come speak to my group. And I said, sounds cool. Awesome. Fun. Like, I love speaking to people, but I had made a decision that I was going to too many events and I was speaking to too broad of an audience, and that I actually needed to get more disciplined in who I was saying yes to. And I needed to get better at saying no to people, essentially. And so she reached out to me and was like, we're going to put you up in this hotel and it'll be really fun. And it was in the spring, and I'm like dying for sunshine and warm weather, coming from the Pacific Northwest at the time. So I said, well, let's hop on a call and at least you can share details with me. And so she talked about, I said, tell me about who's in the audience. And she explained more who this individual was. And I could see, when I told the brutal truth, I could see they were not my client that I had just made a commitment to focusing on. And I'm really proud of you for putting this together, and you will absolutely change lives. And this does not line up with who I speak to. So while I'm very grateful for you extending this opportunity to me, it's a no for me. And I didn't give, excuses. I'm so cold and I want to come be in the warmth. Like, I didn't do any of that. And I thanked her and we got off. The next day, she reached back out to me and said, I've never felt as amazing as I do now from somebody saying no to me. She was like, I need to know more about you and what it is that you do. And she ended up hiring me.
Right.
It was new. It was different. And it was something that was experiential, like she felt it in her whole body. So when you can operate this way with your team, when you can operate this way with your clients, like when something doesn't go right and you just fully own it and you apologize, but from a place of not giving the backstories, not giving the excuses, not pointing the finger and blaming, because that's non-powerful. Like blame is so destructive, so destructive. As the CEO, and again, not from the place of the bully, but just owning it and taking that full responsibility and accountability. You empower yourself. Everything that we do is based off of our identity. I don't like to use, phrases like a hack or a shortcut, but in a lot of ways it is. And it's, anytime you're out there in the world and you get triggered, because you will, right? We talked about that. The unexpected will show up in that moment. You can immediately declare to yourself in your mind who you choose to be in that moment and remind yourself of these phrases, and immediately clarity starts to show up. And so when we can shift to that place of deciding and choosing who we want to be in that moment, it's a fast track to a place of power.
Okay, was that not amazing? What is the one takeaway that you have from today's episode? Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a rate and review. Find me on Instagram, katie.live. You can also find me on Facebook, katiericardson.live. If you're listening to all of this and you're like, Katie, this is amazing and I want more of your help, I have an invitation for you. You have an amazing opportunity to get my help inside of your business. And it's through a challenge called #Katie's Clarity. I am going to come in, I'm going to show you how to create radical clarity. What happens when we have this radical clarity is we get unstuck and we have the vision and the visibility to identify the next step that you need to take. That's what we do inside of #Katie's Clarity. So come join me. We dropped a link for you to this challenge in the show notes. Lastly, I want to make sure you're not missing out. So go to whatsworkingnow.com, drop in your email there, and we will make sure you only get the good stuff. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next episode.